It is something that we really can't argue with. Promoting covenant marriage. These are promises that you make. These are vows. This is before God. And how does that reflect the covenant that God made with his people? And being able to sort of help people understand that that's really what you're doing when you do this. It's not just a convenient legal thing so you can get on their insurance or, that kind of stuff. It really is a covenantal thing. Offer promoting premarital classes, education. We usually think, well, the clergy do that. And clergy, pastors are busy people. They can sit with a couple for 6 or 8 sessions. That's 6 or 8 hours times how many couples do they marry in a year, plus planning the wedding itself. It's a time factor for pastors, and it's probably a fun kind of work too. I'm sure many pastors probably enjoy that, but it's also very challenging in the sense that if the church embodied, let's do premarital counseling or let's do that, I think that would help relieve some of their time factors, but also say we really promote this in marriage. Marriage mentoring programs. What do you have any kind of program where if you talked with a couple that was struggling, you could say, John and Marcy over here meet with couples, or they'll take you to lunch, or they'll have you over for dinner and slap some sense into you, or whatever it is that embodies or looks like, that they would be willing to do that. Is there any kind of funding for couples that struggle? I have had churches pay for couples to go on marriage retreats and things like that. I've had pastors who come up with money for them to attend Marriage for Life that I'll tell you about in a minute. So is there a budget line item for something that's pro-marriage that we can do that? Having things available. Is there a regular intervals of knowing about marriage retreats or conferences or things like that? My husband and I just went a couple weekends ago. I think some of you were probably there at the Gary Chapman 5 Love Languages thing over in Grand Forks. We got up that morning, drove to Grand Forks, had a great day, had Chick-fil-A for lunch, saw our son, visited for a little while, and got home. We were back in our beds by bedtime. It was like $70. Very affordable, pretty much local for where we live. And I don't think I saw hardly anyone I knew there. I saw a handful of people. But I was just thinking, man, why didn't we bring a busload of people with us? We really should have. I don't think we were anticipating, well, first it was really good, but there are things that come to our area. And, I kind of the lesson learned for us, don't ever go alone. Drag some couple with you when you go and do that. And I think that's really key. Identify leaders in your church who can be the rallying factors for getting that going, to put the word out, to advertise, use social media, all those ways to connect people to going to do things. Just having pro-marriage topics in Sunday schools, in your sermons, in your youth programs. Youth are thinking about being couples all the time, from about 5th grade on, and so they're really interested in it, but pro-marriage, waiting for marriage, thinking about that. And I think about premarital sex. I have never once had a couple come and tell me that they regret not having sex before they got married. Guess how many have told me they regretted having sex before they got married? Pretty much all of them, right? And so that fact alone is kind of, do we tell kids things like this? Do we talk? Having small groups, I think for even my own marriage has benefited from small groups that we've participated in through the years, and just having other couples who are doing this hard work of marriage, that we support each other, we talk to each other, we invest in our marriages and things like that. And of course, access to good materials in your churches and libraries. Some creative ideas. Can you promote date night by just simply providing childcare? This conference that we went to over in Grand Forks had like a childcare deal set up for all these. There's like 225 kids being looked after for the 1,100 people that attended there. And you walked in, I didn't even have a kid. I wished I'd had a kid, because they had people with signs and balloons going, here's where the 2-year-olds come, and here's where the 6-year-olds come. It was a beautiful thing. I don't know who these people were that were doing this, but somehow that church rallied their membership to spend a day, a Saturday, looking after other people's kids so they could attend a marriage conference. How incredible is that, you know? Pretty neat, pretty simple. I don't know if they got paid or not, but, you know.
They did.
They did? Well, good. That's maybe what you do.
Why not?
You fund it. You pay them.
Exactly.
Because those parents would have had to pay somebody somehow, some way too. Yeah. Encouraging couples to get into some kind of small group. You know, even if it's, you know, doing something outside of the church, a ski club or whatever, getting that going. Dinner groups. How many people just like to eat, you know? So I'm going to make spaghetti, and you bring the bread, and you bring the dessert, and you bring, you know, this, and just come on over, and we'll just have an evening, and we'll eat, and we'll talk, and nobody really had to do a lot of work, and, you know, it's a great thing. Movie nights, and that's another, provide childcare so these people can go out to eat. Or say, you know what, there's a really great movie, if it's the kind of quality movie that we want to promote, say, everybody meet at the movie theater, and then afterwards, don't go right home. You two, each couple, say goodbye to all your friends at the movies and go out for dessert or go for a drive together or just go spend some time and sort of build the idea of this is how you do a date night. You know, this is how, because movies in and of themselves aren't the best date night. You're staring at a screen, eating popcorn. I don't even care who's around me unless I don't want to watch the movie. But being able to get in there and do that. Simulcast, you don't have to go anywhere, especially way up here in northern Minnesota. You just beam it right in. Our church hosted, Leslie Parrott did Fight Night a few months ago or whatever. It's last fall, I think. And, you know, we just made some popcorn, I think, and opened the doors. And people just came and they beamed it in. They did all the work. All we had to do is learn, listen and learn, and it was great. Financial Peace University, the Dave Ramsey materials, all of those kinds of things. Because what's one of the reasons people give for getting a divorce, having marital problems, is financial stuff. Let's shore up their capacity to make and stick to a budget or to talk about those kind of things. Even just having a men's ministry or a women's ministry. I want my husband to have other men that can speak into his life. He wants me to have good girlfriends, you know. So when you have that kind of good vitality going, it makes the whole relationship vibrant. Have a time, you know, our church used to do this years ago. I don't know why we really quit, but every year they would have like a wedding cake, and you could bring your wedding book, and if you had been married 5 years, 10 years, 15, some increment of 5, you did a little like vow renewal thing, that little thing, and you could show your pictures and talk about your wedding and eat wedding cake, and you know, it was just a fun night, but it was just that emphasis on that, you know. We talk about, our church announces when somebody's baby's born, but we never announce when somebody's having an anniversary, you know, and maybe a 60th or something, you know, you've got to have to wait a long time before the church acknowledges it, or have a Valentine's banquet, or have those date nights. So those are just some creative ideas. A lot of resources out there, multiple forms. I put some books on the table here, that are good ones that was mentioned by one source that I had looked at that I happen to have copies of. Books are good. People aren't as into books as much because they want to find it online, they want to beam it in, they want a podcast, they want a blog, they want a daily devotional app that sends them something, whatever your church, if your church is highly wired like that, find the resources that are there and promote those kind of things. There's tons of stuff. I have a whole packet here of the best Christian resources to help, and I'll just leave that there if anybody wants to look at it, but I don't know if they're the best, but they're what somebody thought was the best. But being able to acknowledge those kind of things, having conferences, encouraging couples to go, maybe not every year, that's a lot, especially in those child rearing years when you're quite busy, but encouraging them to go to a marriage conference periodically, 3 to 5 years, 2 to 5 years, whatever. Take a busload of people. Lots of curriculums, lots of online resources. Marriage for Life is something that I do for young married couples as well as pre-married couples. Typically, their pastor will refer, you know, somebody comes and says, Pastor, we're getting married, and the pastor says, go do this, you know. It's bigger in central Minnesota. There's a couple of sessions that are up in here at our church is willing to host, but I cover communication. I teach them how to communicate. We talk about finances a little bit. We talk about how to fight. how to fight well, how to fight fair, how to grow spiritually together as a couple, and even just giving couples the idea that that's an expectation. A lot of couples have the idea that they should even think about praying together. Caring behaviors, etc. I use the SYMBIS, which is the Saving Your Marriage Before It Starts. It's a Leslie Parrott product that is a couples inventory. And the state of Minnesota knows, because couples who do premarital counseling are 30% less likely to get a divorce. And so they give them a $75 discount if they complete a premarriage counseling packet. So I'm able to give the couples that certificate so they can do that. But I really want to hear, and actually out on the table, I think it's right around the corner as you go out this door, there's more information about Marriage for Life if you're interested in bringing that back to your pastors or church or whatever. But what works in your church? What do you think your church is already doing that promotes healthy marriage for life? Or nobody's church is doing nothing?
I think adult Sunday school is important.
Adult Sunday school, okay.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Getting couples to attend, yeah.
My church, I go to House of Prayer, and this might not particularly be just for marriage, but they have like a halftime in between when they'll have like the worship, and then they have like a 15-minute halftime where you can check the kids in. That way people can actually interact with people. And a lot of times in churches, once you have kids, you don't talk to your friends ever because you're chasing your kids around.
Yep.
So they have like that halftime in between so everyone can like connect.
Okay. So drop the kids and be an adult for a few minutes. That's really neat. That's wonderful.
Small groups for couples.
Small groups
yeah.
for couples. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Tim Johnson was saying something earlier just about, and I think this is so true, you cannot impart what you don't possess. I can't give you something I don't have. So what are you doing to support your own marriages? You know, and I think that, are you protecting those? Are you growing them so that you have that to impart to other people or to give them? So I think that's really key. You know, think about your church. Can you identify some older, more mature couples that you would say, yeah, they could be mentors, or they could be a couple that has a strong, solid, godly, biblical marriage I could direct couples to? Talk to them. Say, would you ever want to do this? Most people will say, well, what would we have? You know, I say, well, you know what, sometimes it's just doing it is part of, there's your training right there. But sometimes maybe there is some little something you can send them to, or a book they can read so they can pass something on, or leading a small group with some materials the church can provide. Think about your budgets at your churches. Is there anything pro-marriage in those budgets? Any kind of resources there? Buy, libraries. If you walk in the church library, you see the word marriage in there at all.
1 minute.
And how does that go?
1 minute.
Church calendar. Is there anything coming up on our church calendar that supports marriage? Is there a retreat? Is there a conference? Is there a small group? Is there a Sunday school class? Is there what? And should we always maybe be planning for the next thing? It's not a one-time, one sermon a year, is not enough to support, because couples are hurting day and day and day and day and day. And then just think about what your church, could do, what your church budget could do, who you are as a married person if you're married, and what you could do. But, kind of think about that. And we had the 1 minute warning. I know you probably have questions and thoughts, but Marriage for Life info is around the corner. And I'm going to hang out here, and before you start your break, if you have questions or thoughts, and I appreciate your time and attention and being here, and I hope that good things happen in your marriage.